The Freedom Junkies presents Breaking Free. I'm Ems Rickson, and this is Breaking Free, the podcast where I talk honestly about addiction, how it has affected me, and the things I do to break free, in the hope it will help others who want to do the same.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Breaking Free. It feels like it's been a really long time since we've made any podcast episodes. We've had quite a bit of change going on at the moment. We've left Germany and we're now back in the UK. And so we've been on the road for a couple of weeks, catching up with people, traveling around. So it's been a little bit difficult to make podcast episodes. But we are currently in one place at the moment for quite a while. So I thought now would be the perfect time to make an episode. And what I wanted to talk about today was stress. The reason that we're currently in one place for an extended period of time is that our van, Trusty Bob, has broken down. She managed to get us all the way to my parents' house in southwest London, and on the way started making the most horrendous rattling noise I've ever heard come from an engine. And when we took the van to a local garage to get their MOT done, we thought we'd ask them to check out what that heinous noise was. And they got back to us and told us that we needed to get a brand new engine fitted in the van, and that it was going to cost us somewhere around about £5,000. This was definitely not what we were expecting. I've been working really hard over the winter to save money to pay for the van bills that we were expecting, like our tax and MOT and insurance and all that kind of thing. But to be suddenly hit with a £5,000 van bill and to be stranded, to have our plans that we've made for the last couple of weeks sort of put on hold, suddenly starting to feel a lot of stress. I was feeling pretty stressed out, and I realized that, again, since I've quit smoking and since we've quit drinking, that our methods of dealing with stress have definitely changed. And I thought it would be great to share some information with you on stress and what causes it and different methods that I use to deal with it. So what is stress? We kind of have this vague general feeling, everyone is always feeling stressed. I feel stressed about this, or this is stressing me out. But what actually is stress? Stress is your body's response to outside pressure. It's obviously different for everybody. What can contribute and cause stress differs from person to person, depending on your background, your economic or social situation, your genetic makeup. All these different kinds of factors can contribute to stress. And some of the main general kind of things that can cause stress for a lot of people, for example, are something like experiencing something new or unexpected. For example, finding out that the engine has dropped out of your van. Something that threatens your sense of self. So perhaps some form of like social anxiety or being nervous about being around new people, or feeling like you don't have any control over a situation. Something that I definitely identified with when I found out about our van problems. Stress is a physical response. It's something that's happening in your body, and it's basically a hormonal response. So you have a couple of different stress hormones. One is adrenaline and one is cortisol. And these stress hormones are released in your body to create something that we call fight or flight, so that your body can respond quickly to a situation when it arises. There are two different kinds of stress. You have what we call eustress. I want to say it's eustress. You can check it out online and make sure that I've got that right. But this is what we would categorize as like a good kind of stress. So this is where the stress hormones have motivated you. It's got a kind of sort of seize the day, invigorating kind of feel that gives you the motivation to go out and get something done when a stressful situation occurs. And the reason this is the good kind of stress is because you have an outlet for your stress hormones, especially for cortisol. So you can release those out of your system and your fight or flight response will then dissipate. The other kind of stress is what we call distress. And this is a bad kind of stress. And this is what happens when there's no outlet for your cortisol, for your stress hormones to be released after you have experienced them. You need to get them out of your system. And this kind of stress happens a lot these days because when you're in flight or fight, back in the day, you would have either fought or fled, and both of those things would have helped you to release or reduce the amount of cortisol in your brain. However, obviously nowadays we're experiencing a lot of stress that doesn't come from being, attacked or chased on the savannah. So we don't really have a lot of outlets for that stress. And so the cortisol can build up over time. If the stress is excessive, if it happens a lot, or if you experience stress for a long period of time, it can really start to affect your body and you feel like you're permanently in that kind of fight or flight mode, which can be very overwhelming and can lead to a lot of anxiety, depression, mental health issues, a lot of health issues as well, because when cortisol builds up in your body, it can physically affect you too. So clearly, experiencing stress is something that happens to everybody, but it's obviously something that we need to learn how to deal with effectively. For me, for a long time, smoking or drinking was how I used to deal with stress, and that clearly comes with issues of its own. It's not a particularly healthy way to deal with stress. It's not a very good long-term solution. So what I want to try and suggest now is some ways that you can combat stress both in the moment when you're feeling stressed at the time, and then also methods that you can use on a regular basis to help overall reduce your levels of stress. This is something that I've definitely done over the last few days. When we found out about the van's engine, it immediately caused a quite visceral reaction. I got really upset. I cried. I was angry. I felt frustrated, and I had to really stop and take a breath and think about why it was that I was feeling stressed. So obviously the initial cause was my van's engine needs replacing. But when you think about that, that in of itself is not necessarily a stressful thing. When I took it back and thought about why it was that that particular thing was making me feel stressed, I realized it was because financially I was worried about being able to afford it. So what I've realized is that a lot of situations where I feel stressed often come down to money. And I think that's the same for a lot of people. Money or lack of money or feeling like you can't afford to do the things that you need to do creates a lot of stress for people. But what that's done has helped me figure out what the root cause of a lot of my stresses are. And if you can figure out what it is that causes you regular stress, then it can kind of give you a general idea, right? I know that in this situation I'm feeling stressed because of lack of money, for example. It also, if you think about why you are feeling stressed, it also helps you sort the issues into things that you can't do anything about and things that you can do something about. It can help you make a plan, take control, have a look and think about things that you can actually do to move forward, something that you can physically do that can help you to relieve that feeling of stress, rather than worrying about the things that you actually don't have any control over. So in the example with the van engine, once I realized that it was necessary, it had to happen, I just had to accept that this was what was going to happen, then I could move on and start to think about how I could fix the feeling of feeling stressed. What were the actual things that I could do to move forward so that I didn't just worry about everything. Another thing that we tried really hard to do was to find the silver linings, which sounds super cheesy, but actually it was something that really, really helped over the last few days. Ryan and I both tried really hard to look for the opportunities that we have now that we found out that we weren't going to be going anywhere for at least a week. We were lucky that we broke down where we had somewhere to stay that's very comfortable. We were able to stay in London for a bit longer, so we got to go on the People's Vote March up in London, which I was really pleased that we were able to go to that. You can look for the opportunities that you have now because this thing has happened, or the positives of a situation if you flip it around. So yes, it's really terrible. Our van broke down. We have to replace the engine. But the flip side of that means that we've had more time to spend with family. We've had time to work on the blog and the podcast because now we're somewhere with good internet and electricity, which is not always the case for us. So, it's been helpful to think of things like that in a positive light rather than choose to get frustrated by them. The third thing that I did especially, was some self-care. So in a situation where you're feeling stressed and anxious, taking some time to just do something that you enjoy and that you love and that makes you feel good can really, really help take your mind off things. So I crocheted a lot. I watched some excellent comedy and some feel-good movies. I ate some chocolate and just generally kind of tried to do things that made me feel better. I'm taking the opportunity that now I'm here with lots of internet to catch up with my family in Australia, which is really lovely. We don't get to talk all that often, so that's been really nice. Doing things that can make you feel better is a great way to just sort of relax and take your mind off things. It helps to counteract that feeling of stress, the fight or flight response, and just sort of relax you a little bit. So those are some things that you can do in like the moment around the time when something happens that causes you some stress. But there are quite a few things that you can do every day or on a regular basis that over time will really help you to manage stress. The first one, which we wrote a blog post about, I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode. We wrote a post a while ago about gratitude and how it can help you gain some perspective. So if you get into the habit, it doesn't have to be every day, but get into the habit of writing down the things that you feel grateful for. It can really help you over time to shift your perspective so that you automatically start to focus on things that you are thankful for rather than the things that are stressing you out or making you anxious. The second one is sleep. Definitely getting into a healthy sleep pattern so that you are rested and able to deal with the things that come your way, because life is always going to throw stuff your way. Once you are in a healthy sleep pattern, you're definitely going to be better able to deal with what comes your way. I've recently discovered that there's like a bedtime function on my iPad that tells you when to go to bed and like how many hours of sleep to have and when to wake up. And that's been really useful. We've been using that. It's been really nice because getting into a pattern where you're getting the right amount of sleep is super important for your health. So if you have that function, I definitely recommend trying it out. But if you don't, just try and go to bed and wake up at the same time if you can, and that will help you get into a healthy sleep pattern. The third thing is exercise. So exercise basically gives you an outlet for that fight or flight response. So you can do something super active like kickboxing or martial arts or, something that kind of helps with the fight element of that situation. Or cardio is basically recreating the flight, I suppose. Go for a run, cycling, swimming, anything like that kind of uses up the stress hormones in your body. It can also help with reducing fear. Fear is a big contributor to stress. If you exercise regularly, it helps you with like your self-confidence and your feeling of resilience. So it can reduce that feeling of fear and anxiety, and that will help overall to deal with stress. Things like yoga as well also combine the benefits of exercise with mindfulness. So, definitely exercising regularly is something that will help you be resilient when it comes to dealing with stress. And the final thing is meditation. And I've said it lots of times. It's definitely, I feel like it's the thing that is helping me the most at the moment deal with all kinds of things. So I wanted to talk a little bit more about it. For me, meditating, I've been doing it every day, 10 minutes in the morning every day since January. It was the thing that I decided to do for Dry January as a challenge to try and get into the habit. And I found it really great. I talked a little bit about it in the second Dry January podcast that I did. And yeah, I've just basically carried it on. I set a timer on my iPad every morning and I do 10 minutes. And I have a few different techniques that I like to do depending on how busy my mind feels. Sometimes I feel like I need a little more help than others. So if my mind is feeling particularly busy, then I, do something as basic as counting my breaths. I find that really helps to stop my mind from wandering. So I count 1 on the inhale and 2 on the exhale, and I count to 10. And then when I get to 10, I start at 1 again. Sometimes though, your mind's pretty clever. I find that I can actually think about stuff and count at the same time, especially if my mind has figured out that my exhale is always an even number. So sometimes you can try and mix it up and count 1 on your exhale and 2 on your inhale, just to try and make it slightly more difficult to keep track of. And then that way you have to really focus on the breathing. So counting your breaths is a great option. Alternate nostril breathing is something that I picked up from the yoga course that I did at the beginning of the year. And that, again, is something that really helps to focus my mind. You need to concentrate to be able to do it properly. So basically what you do is you block your, I'm going to get this right, my left and my right is not great. Block your right nostril first and breathe in for 4 through your left nostril. Then you close your left nostril and you breathe out through your right. Then you breathe in through your right, close your right nostril and breathe out through your left. And that's 1 round. And you breathe for 4 counts every time. So it basically means that you're breathing the exact same amount through each side of your nose. And this is a very kind of balancing and grounding breathing exercise. And I find it just really helps to kind of focus my mind. So I do maybe 5 or 10 rounds of that at the beginning of my 10 minutes. And I find that helps me to focus quite a lot. There's also some mantras that I got from my yoga course that I find quite helpful. So things that you can say to yourself as you're breathing in and out. It's obviously different ones are good for different people. So if you're interested, then I definitely recommend either checking out online to see if there's anything you can find that is of interest to you, or going along to meditation classes. A lot of towns have Buddhist centers that will offer free meditation, often during kind of like lunch times and things like that. And they're definitely a great place to go learn more about meditating. And the thing that I found most important is that I'm doing it every day. So it's definitely taken a little effort to get into that habit. But now, maybe 3 months in, I'm definitely finding that it's just like the natural part of my morning routine now. And so because I'm doing that every day, I can feel that it's definitely helping. I feel like if the van had broken down, 4 months ago, I definitely would have been a lot angrier, and I definitely would have cried a lot longer than I did. I mean, I still cried and I was still angry, but it didn't last for very long before I sort of pulled myself up and just sort of was like, right, I need to just get on with this now because this behavior isn't solving anything. So I feel like, I'm not a Zen monk yet, for sure, but my ability to cope with things is definitely improving. And so it's quite hard to notice the benefits straight away, but they are definitely there. And so it's important to do these things regularly. I feel like you're just not going to notice any kind of benefit if you just sort of dip in and out, if you only meditate when you're stressed. This is the kind of tool that only helps if you do it on a regular basis. So if there's one thing that I would recommend to do to help you to combat stress, it would definitely be meditating, because it's something that you can start off with even just 3 minutes a day. Just quiet your mind, just listen to your breathing, and you can build up from there. Have a go every day and just sort of notice the effects that it has. The next time something that comes along that regularly stresses you out, you can feel how your ability to deal with it and to cope and to, do the other things that I suggested, like find the silver linings or, find the positives in the situation, how your ability to do that has improved. So I hope you found this episode useful. If you've got any other tips or ideas on great ways to handle stress, then head over to the Freedom Junkies Facebook page, join the group, contribute, let us know the ideas and tips that you have, because it's always great to hear ideas from other people. And if there's any other issues that you think would make a great podcast episodes, it would also be really great to hear from you. I would love to make episodes about the issues that people want to hear about. So if you've got any ideas for that, also contribute on the Facebook page. That would be awesome. Thanks so much for listening.
If you enjoyed this podcast, head to Apple Podcasts and leave a rating and review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more information, check out the Freedom Junkies Facebook group and our blog at www.thefreedomjunkies.co.uk. Thanks to Visceral Manifestations for the design, Ryan Swainson for the theme tune, and all of you for listening.